Well, Charles, I forgot to check this before beginning, but it seems that the Crowdsource the Truth logo is blocking the title for today's episode, where the Clinton Foundation cronies are practically begging Donald Trump and the Department of Justice to indict us.
Exactly. I mean, and yeah, it's a mixture of, we've got George Bush hidden in the crowd here as well, and of course, George H.W. Bush is underneath the crowd. But this is the art department has done a masterful job. For people who don't know this movie, it is a movie called Invictus, which has, I think, Matt Damon in it.
Yeah.
Playing the South African, obviously white rugby star on their team. Now, I'm not much into rugby, but I do know that the South African sports team, the Springboks, is renowned rugby team. And the issue, the premise of the movie was that in the switch after Mandela was released from prison and took over the country, the rugby team was concerned that there would be retribution. And in fact, what Mandela was all in behind the Springboks is an iconic team and all in for South Africa to win the World Cup. So it's actually quite a good movie. But in this case, Indict Us, this is the World Cup of fraud and corruption, in which Bill Clinton, it's tough to tell who is the bigger fraudster, Bill Clinton or Barack Obama, or the Clinton team or the Obama team or the Bush team for that matter. And that's the tale we've been telling now. This is our 211th podcast together, Jason, since June of 2017. And it's, since we are talking about the World Cup of fraud, you get to do a lot of podcasts to get everybody to understand the many dimensions and the fine contours of this. It's really a blood sport.
What is a blood sport?
Well, charity fraud. I mean, if you think about it, we're far away. I remember as a kid, and then as a young teen or approaching teen, and then going through high school and college, I can remember thinking through, what can our family, what can I afford? And I would get very uncomfortable when we got into discussions with people I didn't know about, when some stranger would say, well, we have enough money to do X. I don't care what a stranger and I, might want to do together until I know a lot more about that stranger. And, when you start getting into these politicians leading you down the alley, the blind alley of saying we as a nation can afford to do this and that and the other thing, it's not entirely clear that most of us in this country truly understand the nation's finances. And so what's happened since 1988, in part, is that Americans have become too quick, and people living in the richer countries have become too quick to embrace these grandiose internationalist plans, globalist plans, without understanding their true costs, and without putting in place a mechanism to check and see that sums allocated for these great plans actually get spent for the great plans and don't end up enriching the presidents and the former presidents and their various families and the world leaders in the many countries, the self-professed world leaders. And so that's been going on now for 32 years, since 1988. I mean,
I say longer than that, Charles.
I'm saying since '88, with the advent of globalism, arguably beforehand, of course. It started in places like New York City long ago, over a century ago, with Tammany Hall. You start having collections of people come together and a given place doing really well, and next thing you know, some politician is buying votes with the people's money and making sure that politician and others like him or her are like the Pelosi family or the Clinton family, the Bush family. It's not a right or a left-leaning thing. It's the World Cup of fraud.
Somebody sent me a pretty funny meme that scientists have discovered the densest substance known to man, Pelosium.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think that was probably a joke.
Although I think Maxine Terzium would probably come
pretty dense.
Pretty damn dense.
Pretty dense.
She said recently, I mean, she's really a stark raving lunatic, but I mean, she said...
Pelosi or Maxine?
Both, but Maxine was quoted, I think, last week as saying that the Crips and the Bloods have more integrity than Donald Trump.
Wow.
I mean, A, how do you know
how much integrity a gang has.
Right.
She's rolling with them.
Right. And I mean, if you don't show up to Congress and to the State of the Union addresses, and all you do is you yell at Trump. I mean,
did Maxine Waters not show up at the State of the Union address?
This most recent one, she might have been, but the earlier ones, she's boycotted all kinds of things. And there's another
Sanity.
There's another
one of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's another multimillionaire from her decades in public service. I mean, and that's okay. I mean, you're just supposed to look the other way and say, yeah, people who have absolutely no money and get into politics suddenly can live in mansions in their home district, and that's okay. Nothing to see here.
Nobody seems to mind. They just sort of allow her to do whatever, and it's like, hey. Maxine Waters, how did you afford that huge mansion?
Exactly.
It's sort of like, what?
Yeah.
Huh? You talking to me?
Yeah.
Now, Charles, I've been mentioning, and I mean, I think most people appreciate this fact. I've been mentioning that the studio, the whole setup here, has been undergoing a number of technological evolutions, changes and things. The goal, of course, is to improve the quality of the broadcast, to improve the reliability of the broadcast. It's not easy. I think most people really appreciate it and are interested to some extent in hearing me just tell people about it. There have been a limited number of super obnoxious comments from people who are basically telling me things like, shut up, nobody cares about the technology, which is kind of mean. I've been working really hard on it. I don't understand why people would come here to watch this show to be mean to me. Because if you hate me or want to be mean to me, the show doesn't happen without me. So it's like, you could be indifferent to me, that's fine. You don't have to like me. But if you want to come here and insult me, that makes no sense. Most people, I think, appreciate what's happening. Been improving the sound quality, still working on tweaking it a little bit. Today, we've got yet another radical change that'll hopefully eliminate some of that fluttering people have been hearing. And we are at full 1080p HD, massively expanded bit rate, fiber optic now.
Wow.
And there's other changes that I haven't even begun to speak about yet, but I won't bore the audience of Sunday with Charles with that. I will say, Charles, a number of people have stepped up. And, I'm talking about the sponsors on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. A really surprising number of people have gone from $1 a month to $2 a month, $2 a month to $5 a month.
Great.
This is just last night, overnight, $5 to $10. And a handful of people have gone from $10 per month to $25 per month. That's a lot. I really want to thank those people. $25 a month is a lot. I want to remind everybody, those $25 per month sponsors, after 3 months at that level, are going to get a free Robert Mueller Nothing Burger mug. The people who've just gone to $10 are going to immediately enjoy the free Sunday with Charles screensaver. And if anybody is a $10 sponsor and hasn't gotten that yet, just send me an email. I'll make sure you get it. So that was really unexpected. I think this is a sign that people who really do count like these improvements. And I'm not asking anybody to increase their sponsorship, but I wouldn't say no. And it's really appreciated.
That's great, Jason. And I think, are we also podcasting now?
Yes, right. We're now also a podcast, Charles. We are available to people on iTunes and Spreaker and elsewhere. I should have had that link ready, but I'll bring that up in just a few moments. I know you've got to be ready to dive into the slides.
I am indeed. So, we've got quite a lot of information packed into only 9 slides today, and what we're doing is stepping out a little bit and widening the focus. The narrow focus, or I should say the broader focus of all these previous podcasts has been the degree to which leaky foundations are used as conduits to turn dirty money into cleaner money, to trade dirty money for influence, for all sorts of nefarious purposes. But the bigger subject is not just that foundations do it, but in fact foreign aid from any country to any remote nation or group of nations where there are no controls is an obvious way in which to make money disappear. And it's it should come as no shock to people that when you open up a spigot, when you say, from whatever country it might be, if Mexico starts sending money to Africa, or frankly Africa starts sending money to Arkansas,
that would portions be a real switch.
I'm just saying, well, not so much. Portions of Africa are richer than portions of Arkansas. But whenever you start sending money far away from wherever the donor lives, and when you do so, ensuring that there is, say, no inspector general at the State Department for 5 or 6 years to check, to have the mechanisms in place to check and see what happened to the many billions, tens of billions of dollars that go outside this country or to foreign countries, you've got a prescription for corruption. And unlike, for example, when we think about the private sector, you have that angry fake Indian, Elizabeth Warren, wanting to regulate everything. And of course, when you get to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the requirements are for public companies, you've got to make a quarterly report on the real financial condition of your company. And it should be granular and deep with lots of footnotes and the ability for people like me and others who've spent time on checking financial statements to really look right into a GE's financial statement and say, hang on, after 90 days, there's a massive problem. In the world of foreign aid, in the world of charities, there's no such quarterly requirement. You send the money out in 2020, and you might get a report that makes any sense, any freaking sense, in 2021, 2022, but none of these reports on what happened to our foreign aid are done in the kind of tight way you'd like to see it, where we allocated, let's say, $750 million to this project. On what date did we allocate it? Where did the money specifically flow from? What bank accounts did it leave the United States? What bank accounts did it hit on what days and what foreign countries? Who had custody and control over the foreign country money? What were the dollars translated to in local currency? When did each vendor get involved? Who were these vendors? Did any of these vendors have any connections to politicians who might have, or bureaucrats who might have been allocating the money? What about family members of politicians interlinking with family members of vendors or regulators or whatever? None of that stuff is covered in now the many decades of hundreds of billions of dollars, just considering the U.S. in foreign aid that gets sent outside. And everybody, where we sit here in one of the richest countries on earth in New York City, and even in our great city, you can walk not very far away from the fanciest places in New York City, and you will see people sleeping on the streets, wandering around in a drug-induced haze, mentally challenged people, hoodlums all over the place. You'll see desperately poor people in the richest city on earth. Imagine what it's like.
Below 14th Street.
Easy. No, imagine what it's like, and don't even pick on a country like Ethiopia, or we've talked about Nigeria. I mean, imagine a country where the per capita consumption is $7,500 instead of $30,000 or $40,000 a person. You're going to have tremendous amounts of depravity. You're going to have a different attitude towards corruption than in theory we have in the United States. And so foreign aid is a game for people who should not be naive. They should be people who are cynical. They should be people whose activities need to be checked regularly. They should have stiff penalties for people who steal foreign aid or raise money for projects in the backs of poor children and poor women and poor whatever around the world, and then steal the money.
Like you can't run for president if you do that stuff.
Yeah, like
that
ever.
Would be good.
Yeah, and like that presidential foundation that was set up in your name, we're just going to call that 43rd President Foundation. No longer should it be even called the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Corruption Slush Fund Foundation. But anyway, so the task of regulating foreign aid, it's not because I'm against foreigners. It's not because Americans are against foreigners. If you're going to get involved in a project of sending money around the world to these poor places, you better have mechanisms and controls and constraints in place and checks and balances in place to make sure that money just doesn't disappear, as it did when we did it in this country under Obama. He bragged recently, and his people bragged recently, saying that we have our current economic trajectory now thanks to the stimulus program in 2009, where almost $1 trillion was raised for shovel-ready jobs. And at the end of the day, President Obama and the man who was in charge of deciding where that money went, Jeffrey Immelt,
they're deciding what's ready to be shoveled.
Well, they joked. Somebody said there were no shovel-ready jobs, and there was a conference. These guys are just joking. Yeah, it wasn't. Ha, ha, ha. We just blew $1 trillion. I mean, that kind of stuff, you should get the hook off the stage, direct to the courtroom, Corsi and Roger Stone style FBI agent raids, and you should go to prison for the rest of your life. And you raise $1 trillion on false pretenses, and it disappears, and who knows where it actually went. That's inside this country. I mean, imagine what has been going on when you consider our foreign aid budget and the UK foreign aid budget and the Norwegian foreign aid budget. All these countries are just wiring money around the world so these unregulated globalists could take credit for projects that perhaps have actually made the world worse as opposed to better. So this is, I think we're moving into a new zone. And interestingly, listening to one of the angriest people on the planet, Bernie Sanders. I mean, he really, I mean, I was watching his reaction to this and to that. He wakes up in the morning and there's probably pets you're slinking away from grandfather Bernie. The children are running, the babies are crying, and everything's wrong. You know, the world is falling apart and he needs to snarl at you. I mean, and so I guess people like that. People in the Democratic Party want a snarler in chief. But when was the last time this guy smiled, told a joke, just chilled out? I mean, this economy, you can say what you want about America, but this economy, using Obama figures, Trump figures,
Star Wars figures,
whatever economic figures you want to look at compared to the rest of the world, is humming. It's doing pretty damn well. And I don't think there are a whole hell of a lot of sensible and sane people who are saying, okay, we've got an economy that's humming along. Yes, the rich have gotten richer, as he would like to say, and he's one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, Bloomberg was absolutely right to say. I mean,
that was funny.
That was hilarious. I mean, yes, Bloomberg's richer than Bernie, but how does a socialist from Vermont, who was the mayor of some tin pot city in the capital city in Vermont, and then has been a senator, has had to have a home in Vermont and a home in Washington, D.C., and now he has a third home. How does this guy come up with all this money? And how closely has the FBI actually looked at his wife's operation with that college that went bankrupt when they raised an endowment and borrowed money under false pretense? I mean, here's a guy who seems to have done pretty well in this country he hates. I mean, going back to whatever year it was that his honeymoon was, I think it was in the 60s. I may have that wrong. It's either the 60s or the 70s. I don't think it was in the 50s. It was not a time to go to the Soviet Union for any reason, let alone for your honeymoon. Yeah. So here's an angry guy, started his marriage off going on a honeymoon in the Soviet Union when nobody went to, very few people went to the Soviet Union. Most of the traffic from the Soviet Union was one way outside the Soviet Union as quickly as you could get out of there. This guy goes on a honeymoon, makes all this money, and he's all he's doing is criticizing, snarling, and lecturing, and yet he's winning. Now, what I would point out to
real
people,
quick, Charles. Charles, he was married from 1964 to 1966 to a woman named, where is it? I just had it here.
Was that the honeymoon in the 60s?
Deborah Schilling, 1964 to 1966, and then Jane O'Meara, 1988. So I would presume 1964 would have been the
I mean, let's think about
honeymoon in Moscow. I mean, it almost sounds like it would be a movie.
I mean, you could do. I don't know anybody who's involved.
Honeymoon in Vegas. Have we ever done that? Honeymoon in Moscow.
Yeah, right, we can do it. But I mean, I don't know anybody sitting in this room that who I'm looking at directly who could, for example, juxtapose, and we go back into time, Nikita Khrushchev at the UN taking his shoe off and pounding the table, because he was upset with whatever position the U.S. had taken in the Security Council. that was like in I want to say 61 or 62, maybe 63, in that rough time frame. You see that, and young Bernie Sanders says, you know what? I admire a leader who would do that at the UN. I want to go on my honeymoon to the Soviet Union. I mean, it's just laughable.
How do you like his shoes?
Yes, 1960. There you go. I mean, does he look a little bit like Bernie with less hair? But
not exactly Salvatore Ferragamo.
That's right.
He's like, I will smash this communist loafer.
That's right.
Not you,
and
Bernie.
he's got the snarl down. Look at the snarl.
I mean, that's a better picture of the shoe.
Bernie's like, I could do that.
Why did he use this shoe?
I mean, you got to get a picture of Bernie holding the shoe. I mean, that's what he's doing. He's going around the country banging a damn shoe at everybody, saying,
honeymoon in '88. Mug is saying, well, that makes a lot more sense. That would have been right around the time of Perestroika.
No, it doesn't make sense. '88 is before.
Yeah, you're right.
That's as Berlin Wall was coming. He was probably going over there and saying, "Look, no, don't give up.
That wall.
Don't give up." I mean,
wow.
Honestly, and of course, he's the most popular candidate in the faculty lounges across the world in New York, in the United States. All the professors love Bernie. All the students in the stupid scruffy hats and the scruffy beards and the crazy knapsacks and those stupid wool hats that they wear. I mean, they all love this guy because at most of even the top universities in America and around the world, they don't teach you economics anymore. They teach you hate-onomics. Just hate the status quo, turn over power to Bernie Sanders and we fellow economic illiterates. I mean, more telling than anything was the distinguished economics illiterate AOC getting up there and saying that she thinks that the present administration has not learned the important economic lessons of Milton Keynes.
She doesn't know a damn thing.
Well, Milton Keynes is not a thing. It was Milton Friedman or John Maynard Keynes. There's no such thing as Milton Keynes. I mean,
even better.
She probably got a B. She probably did her economics thesis if she had Milton Keynes. I mean, we don't need lessons from former bug-eyed bartenders, or current bug-eyed representatives and former bug-eyed bartenders about what to do with this country. And we certainly don't need lessons from somebody who would, economic lessons from somebody who would go and spend his honeymoon in 1988, if it was then, in the former Soviet Union right before it blew up. So, if we can go back to the slides, Jason.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oops.
We have to ask ourselves, this now being our 211th podcast, how many people must have known and must know the full contours of these frauds? We were talking about going back to October 23rd, 1997, when Bill was president. He learned that he might be impeached and convicted. The law firm of Williams and Connolly went into overdrive. They had to get a funding mechanism in place to pay their own past due bills and future bills, not knowing whether Bill would survive. There have to be, in that era, people didn't use email quite as much as they began to do in the late 90s and then, of course, afterwards. So think of the number of records that exist at all these firms that people may have as insurance copies, the number of lawyers and assistants to the lawyers and consultants and accountants and all the different folks who must know or have an inkling about how much money has been stolen in the guise of the Clinton Foundation, the Obama Foundation, the Bush Foundations, and have been playing along with it, thinking that, it's nice to have dirt on a dynastic political family. Who knows when that dirt might not come in handy to blunt a prosecution or to get a special favor or to get a contract. Think of the number of people who do know about this fraud and this set of frauds, and then ask yourself, what is going on? Why isn't the IRS doing anything about it? Why aren't accounting firms being disciplined? Why aren't we see all the small fish in charity? Just this morning, there's something online, I think I sent it to you, this just in, a tiny little charity fraud, $20,000 or something like that. We go after people for that, but for the Clinton Foundation, for an Obama Foundation, which is supposed to be housing all the presidential records, such as they are, of Barack Obama's legacy during his 8 years as a president, what the hell's going on with the Obama Foundation? How is the Obama Foundation a religion?
How's the construction of that Easter Island style building going?
I know, the pyramids in Chicago.
Has anybody, I mean, do we know?
They haven't been able to move it forward because what they want to do is they want to build on a national park when you can't do that. And local people are saying, no, you can't do that.
Oh,
so
but it looked like they had construction equipment and all kinds of stuff there when I went there last year.
They're around the edges trying to get it done. But I mean, originally they said that they were setting it up to hold presidential records. And then they came back and said, no, we're not going to do that.
It's just a big building in the middle of the park. So what's it going to do?
We're going to digitize the records. They're not going to be in the building.
Why do we even need a building?
Exactly.
Just put a virtual reality headset there and let people...
Right. Just put it on the cloud.
Yeah.
It's just... But anyway, I believe that, again, we've been asserting that this, I've said on television, obviously with you, many times, that this is the largest set of unprosecuted frauds in history. And once you sink your teeth into a portion of one of them, you have to go the whole hog or you have to do none of them. You can't just do part of it because once you start pulling on a piece of it, it exposes more and more and more. So I'm hoping that the reason it's taking so long is that the Trump administration and the people who do care about making sure that charities are properly run and regulated want to do the type of decisive work that needs to get done. This is the story I was referring to. I mean, it just you can't make this stuff up. I mean, the names are amusing. Whitney Bryan is a nondescript name, but you go down here a little bit further up, look at the county, the Ogama County. Oh my God, county. And the name of the person, Dawn Wooter. Okay, she's Wooter is the organization's former treasurer and secretary, Bikers for Kids.
Oh.
Bikers for Kids. And this woman goes in and says, I'll be the treasurer and secretary because I want to steal the money. And it's just how, little frauds like this happen, and many of them happen because people look at the Clinton Foundation and they say, listen, if these people can get away with this crap, we're only stealing money for Bikers for Kids.
But it's the kids.
Yeah, it's for the kids. Everybody raises money for the kids. That's what the Clintons do. Hillary Clinton started out with a children's defense fund. She probably got the idea there, because you hear a sob story about a child, and there are too many of them, and who isn't moved to try to help? And there's a piece of, I think, every one of us, when we hear these sob stories, you say, well, all right, it's probably a fraud, but maybe it's not a fraud. I shouldn't be thinking like that. I'll give them $20. And if, 1,000 people or 100,000 people give somebody $20, suddenly that's a lot of money. Yeah. So, letting the Clinton Foundation, letting the Obama Foundation, letting the Bush foundations emulate the Clinton Foundation now with global health programs and international programs when they haven't changed their paperwork, just opens carte blanche for the Wooters of the world in Oh My God County.
The Wooters. Nicely said, Charles. Okay, so I've got a bunch of things going on here that make it even more confusing than usual, but okay, back to the slides.
All right, so let's jump into the standard warning slide. Whoop, somehow.
I was trying to print it. There you go.
Great. So this approach that we've been taking, or this journey we've been on, is a journey to try to do with tools that exist and are improving thanks to you, Jason, and thanks to advances in technology every day. We're trying to do something that you really couldn't do that easily before June of 2017. I found in my attempts to get this explained that there was a lot of interest in 15 and 16, particularly in 16 after it became clear that it was Trump versus Hillary. The mainstream press was quite willing to hammer this story, and I did have a chance across multiple elements of the mainstream press, print, radio, TV, couple movies, all sorts of stuff. People did take an interest in it, but they only scratched the surface. And when it became apparent to folks like Larry Doyle and Whitey Moynihan and myself and people we can't name, that the real problem, can't name yet, the real problem here is not only the fraudsters. at essence, the real problem is that there are a lot of crooks, in my opinion, in our opinion, inside the IRS, inside the Department of Justice, inside the various security services and their equivalents around the world. And these people, I think, understand that once you rip the scab off the Clinton Foundation, the Obama Foundation, the Bush Foundations, and the whole ways in which foreign aid have been poorly, foreign aid has been stolen, frankly, by the bureaucracy, you start running into a potential situation where the people are out in the streets with pitchforks demanding accountability and justice. So to give people, we didn't want to lead with the idea that there should be that sort of accountability. We wanted instead to patiently lay out, as we have been doing now, these many times, print presentations that you can pull down and look at if you want for more evidence. You can follow links electronically. You can print stuff out. There are literally, at this stage, probably millions of pages of paper that you could look at if you were interested.
Definitely thousands.
No, million. Not in terms of the slides,
Oh,
all the
the
supporting
links.
links. If
Yeah,
you print those out, you're definitely in the millions of pages. So, and the approach we take here is, yes, Jason and I had this conversation, and we take you through stuff, and we encourage you to look at the images and consider everything, but we really want you to wrap your mind around what you see, think for yourselves, and if you support what we're doing, it's so helpful beyond sending money into Jason to keep this alive. It's so helpful to share. A really valuable thing is to take 3 people, 1 person, 5 people, or your email list and say, hey, just saw this presentation. You might not at first want to spend an hour and a half, 2 hours on each presentation, but there's a hell of a lot of information that these guys are onto, and you might want to read it, educate yourselves. This Clinton Foundation is a massive unprosecuted fraud that James Comey and Robert Mueller and Rod Rosenstein were tasked with studying beginning in 2001 and spent 4 years investigating, missing an obvious fraud. Do you think that might be why they were threatened when it appeared obvious that Donald Trump was not going to take guff from the deep state once he got inaugurated? Do you think that might be part of the motivation for this relentless Russia, and other resistance movements against the president? I think it has to be likely that early on in this process, once Comey got contacted in May of 2015 by a lawyer, as we know from the Horowitz report, once he finally had the FBI move to, in theory, investigate the Clinton Foundation in January 2016, he had to have people around him who were smart enough to know that there was a massive set of exposures here over this Clinton Foundation failure to catch the frauds. So we make every attempt in these presentations to give you supporting materials, to try to connect the dots for you. You have to assess them for yourselves. When you have suggestions, please get them to me at my website, either to me on Twitter or Jason on Twitter. I encourage you to follow us both on Twitter. When I have time, which is not every day of the week, I do try to have some fun on Twitter, particularly if people like Hillary Clinton or others now, Mini Mike. And by the way, Jason, it's amazing for you to so quickly mock up the little model you made of Mini Mike. You put it right next to Hillary.
What do you mean?
It's so small you can't see it. But when Mini Mike opens his pie hole, or Biden,
it's an ice cream hole, Charles.
Exactly.
No pie that we're aware of has
That's
gone
right.
in that hole.
But
It's a gay ice cream hole.
I know.
Sorry. 38K. Congratulations, Charles.
They're moving up.
So if anybody is watching who isn't following Charles on Twitter, he's right there at Charles Ortel. Follow him on Twitter. You can DM, read pithy tweets.
Well, actually, one thing that and thanks to my Twitter followers, one thing I've noticed is that when I do start trying to light up Twitter, it does go around to quite a few people, pick up on it, and they retweet, and we're starting to get a little bit of, it's nothing near, obviously, Donald Trump with 72 million followers, but we're starting to get a little bit of a reaction. And thanks so much to my Twitter followers, because I have to say I'm getting a lot of interesting leads, and I do read my Twitter feed. I don't, as I say, do it each day, because on the 2 days when I'm doing a show, and sometimes I get brought into little projects which take me offline. But almost, I would say with regularity, 5 days a week, I'm pretty much all over my Twitter feed. And I do appreciate the thoughts, whether they're in the notifications or the direct messages. It's
Leads and reads, Charles.
Exactly. And here, this is interesting. Katya Blanova, with whom we've done, I think, over 100 stories together, has been kicked off. She's been kicked off Facebook.
Crazy.
And I don't think that's reasonable. I have to say, her work is, she does not just interviews with me. She does lots of different interviews, and she's very, very thorough, very insightful, and she's an independent political analyst who happens to get work published in Sputnik, which, by the way, you could say what you want about Sputnik, and our own government does support, fund various media operations. So if it's okay for our government to do it, I don't understand why it isn't okay for other governments to do similar things. But I don't get how in the hell Mark Zuckerberg, even for all his many billions and the many people working, how is he suddenly a person who can be the arbiter of what ought to be out there in discussion and what not ought to be out there? I mean, why is he so smart? And shouldn't the whole approach be, in fact, the older days where you're encouraged to express your opinions, and if they're wrong, even brutally so, these exchanges, these Twitter, Facebook, it used to be the case. If somebody says something that's really stupid, hello, Mike Bloomberg at the recent debate, or hello, Joe Biden, 24/7, people react instantly to stupid comments, to ignorant comments, and
the internet is built on ignorant comments, Charles.
Right, I know. I mean, that ought to be, frankly, I mean, you should be encouraged to speak your mind and understand that when you do,
nope. El Zuccarino wants to plug right in and control your mind.
Well, nice look. And it doesn't. It should be that you understand when you use these media to say things, and you say something that's wrong, you're going to be rebuked. You should have a conscience. If you say something that's knowingly false, you should expect to be humiliated, frankly. But particularly when you do it in a way to try to manipulate public opinion. And so I don't think this country or the world has yet had the kind of robust conversation we need to have about Zuckerberg's role and Facebook's role in the global debate.
Right.
So if we go back in, just, Jason, I know you like to pull up that playlist, which is...
Oh yes, I was going to show everybody that just a moment ago. Here, we've got all of the episodes of Sunday with Charles, and Charles Ortel is closing in. It's in this handy-dandy playlist on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel. I know it's a little confusing, but this is the main Crowdsource the Truth YouTube channel, still under social engineering attack and banned from live streaming. So if you're watching the live stream right now, you're on Crowdsource the Truth 2. I would encourage people to subscribe to Crowdsource the Truth 2. That's the backup channel. It's going to keep you in touch with the live streams, even when social engineers temporarily take out the main channel. But what you can always do is when you're watching a video, if you go to the video description, you might need to click on this little show more here, and it's going to bring you all these links to the various sponsorship opportunities, as well as this link that says download Charles's presentation. Click on that, brings you to the PDF document, which you can either read on screen or using the standard download icon. You can download it to your own computer where you can print it out and follow along as the show proceeds.
Great stuff. And on just these slides, I mean, let's assume that 200 of the 211 have slides. On a number of occasions, we've had 20 and 30 slides, but more often than not, it's between 6 and 10. Use 10, you're talking about 2,000 pages.
No, it's usually more than 10. I mean, 9 is a light one. Sometimes there are as many as 14, 15 pages. It's quite a lot of writing, Charles.
It's what I guess I do.
That's right.
So Rick Grinnell, as the interim DNI, this is big stuff. And in the last 24, 48 hours, to the extent I've been flipping around channels, I actually have to confess, I mean, it doesn't make a dent here in Manhattan, but I've been watching MSNBC just for the comedic value of it. And the number of people are quaking in their boots. Or what does Rick Grenell know about intelligence? How could we let him in? He's a loyal Trump person. How could we put him in charge of this interim appointment? Because the guy's fucking smart and he knows what he's doing. And look what he did in Germany.
What did he do?
Well, he went in as our ambassador to Germany, and we were getting lectures. Ortel is a German name, and my ancestor John Ortel came in 1853 from Berlin. So people are going to have a hard time saying that, I'm a Germanophobe, but, I don't need to get any lectures from Germany about global affairs. I mean, just the high level view, nice job on World War I, nice job on World War II. I don't care what Angela Merkel has to say, and I don't want to get a lecture from somebody who's not paying her fair share of the NATO bill, and has got these non-trade barriers that make it very difficult for any foreign country to sell into Germany. It's a small market compared to the United States. Most markets are small, consumption and investment compared to the United States. And it's not like the Germans have covered themselves in glory anywhere on earth in anything that they've done other than making cars and machinery.
Lenses.
Benz is pretty good. Some of the cars, Volkswagen, not so much, But, so anyway, this Rick Grenell guy is coming in on a basis where he can only be the interim chief. So you don't need to get all upset that he's going to be there forever. He can't be. You've got to ultimately get a Senate-confirmed person in there. And this update is actually humorous. I don't know if David Blackman is his real name or a pen name, but it's often very amusing, frequently posted up on Free Republic. And it just explains that at long last, under Rick Grenell's stewardship, already things are changing in the deep state. And really, I think this argument that has been used nefariously, frankly, by the deep state, by the security services, that you don't have the requisite security clearance to understand what a genius I've been in protecting this country. As we look across the Middle East, Central America, so many different parts of the world, where it's rather difficult to conclude that we've really covered ourselves in much glory in these security services. So I view with very positive that Rick Grenell is in there shaking things up. I know we have views about Judicial Watch, and I don't know if this link will work or not. First one. If you can hit this, I don't know, if you hit this here, I think the download, does it come up? Or is that the download itself?
That's it.
Okay, so if you go to page 38, you have to hit download, yeah. And I didn't look at every page here, but what was really interesting to me is the timing. When you go to page 38, there are a lot of repeats in this.
Where is it showing us the numbers?
At the top, if you put the little thingy at the top, that's 24. Yeah. There you go. So if you look in here, this is August 18th, 2016. Now, I am reasonably...
Bill Priestap.
Yeah, and this is basically what's going on is Bob Goodlate, who's a congressman, is demanding certain information be put together. And these are, if you go to page, is that 38?
This is.
Yeah, okay. All right, they're going back and forth. What are the acronyms? This is Peter Strzok to Lisa Page on August 18th, 2016. I think what we need to do in the crowd is we need to get some of these text messages that have been uncovered around these dates, but keep scrolling down here. This is, the lovebirds back and forth, deciding when does, here we go. All right. This is, if you go to the preceding page. Okay, slowly, yeah. You haven't heard different. This is about when is Hillary going to get a briefing and when is Trump going to get a briefing about Russia developments, right? You haven't heard different from unknown person, right? She is not designated her people and no date is set. I believe brief will be in the Hudson Valley or White Plains, whatever the RA. Please let me know. And then you hit Pete, John, and do any of you happen to know when Clinton will receive the brief? And then you go down to the next page. This is it. All right, slowly, please. 7:59 p.m. I know Dudette. This is Peter
Who
Strzok
the hell wrote that?
to Lisa Page.
What an idiot the guy is.
In a little. I mean, it's same realization of shit. Haven't even told you about Trump brief.
Is
So
this
they were
an
up to-
official FBI
Yes.
email?
Yes, this is something that was only Judicial Watch has only just gotten out. So I know Dudette. This is at 7:59 p.m. And then I guess this is beforehand. Time, dude, time.
Oh my God! Little love letters to each other in the FBI email.
But this is August 18th. This is a very significant moment. This is as there are rumors that something's going to come down out of the WikiLeaks stuff. They're talking here, I think, about giving Hillary Clinton a brief, but not necessarily giving the same brief to Trump.
Wow.
These are the same people who had looked into it, cleared Hillary Clinton on the email mishandling. They're now getting involved in Crossfire Hurricane. They're cheating on their respective spouses. They're breaking all kinds of rules. They're using FBI emails back. They're withholding these emails. And they're trying to get us to understand. I mean, imagine, use the Cheryl Atkinson thing. Imagine if this were a Trump, exchange. This is outrageous.
It is.
And then you get that glassy-eyed Peter Strzok, staring down Congress and, threatening people. And what's his name? Brennan threatening Trump on CNN and MSNBC. Who the fuck do these people think they are? I mean, honestly, the citizens in this country, we need to go to more of these rallies. We need to certainly go to the polls, and we need to demand.
Go to the rally with a poll. That seems to be allowed now.
I mean, this kind of behavior, there's nothing right about this kind of behavior. And her sanctimonious, remember her Twitter, I guess somebody has actually created the Twitter handle Nutsack Lisa, but hers is Natsack Lisa. I mean, she has all these fawning, ridiculous posts. These people were engaged, and are now engaged in behavior that's not patriotic. It's not behavior that we should revere. This is criminal behavior. These people tried to throw an election in 2016. They've been leading a resistance ever since. And look at this.
Well, this is actually, somebody's modified it. This is not the original image.
Right, with a new handwriting on it, but the photo is original, right?
The photo's the original photo, but somebody put some nutsack enhancements on there. But that's Lisa Page. I mean, I don't know. If I was at the center of a national controversy to the extent that, it affected my family and upset people and affected the presidential race, I wouldn't be putting stuff like this on Twitter.
Yeah, and remember, these people got security clearances. I doubt they still have them, but I hope they don't still have them. But I mean, how does it work? I mean, we learned in the Tucker Carlson, this is a little bit off point, but Tucker Carlson had the Barstool guy. I forget, there's some show, Barstool something or other. And he was saying, regarding Bloomberg, he was saying that this Barstool guy was saying, little did I know that you could be an idiot and be a billionaire. I mean, little did I know that you could be a complete bonehead and be, senior counsel of the FBI, head of the counterintelligence division of the FBI, and you're a bobblehead.
There's a lot of lawyers who are extremely stupid, we're learning, Charles.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So this James Carville, who he's amusing. He's another guy who's like, it's tough to follow what he's actually saying. He's like that character in Waterboy.
Oh, yeah.
The guy who's
You're
Randy
Quaid. Wrong, Colonel Sanders.
No, not that. The guy who's from the swamp, who is unintelligible. That's basically James Carville. But I don't know if I ever shared my James Carville moment with you.
I don't know. What was it?
So when I was working in banking, I lived 100 miles north here, and I would stay at different hotels. And I was staying one day. I guess I felt like I was having a good day, so I was staying at the Plaza Hotel, and I came down in a rainstorm. I had to go only 5 or 6 blocks, and just as the elevator was about to go down, James Carville, caused the doors not to close and jammed himself in, and then I was ahead of him. I get off the elevator first and we go to the cab line. This is in the 90s when Clinton's still president. And he just makes like he's going to walk right in front of the line. And I looked at him and I said, "Excuse me, where do you think you're going?" And he just sheepishly went to the back of the line. And I was like, "This is great." I just, made a statement. And I used to wear expensive English suits. And I get in this suit into the cab. I'm thinking, what a great day I'm having. And I hear this, and this idiot cab driver had this, when you have piping on an upholstered seat, the metal it was sticking out. And I didn't expect to see a sharp piece of metal in a cab. Yeah. So I just tore my pants and destroyed this $3,000 suit.
Oh my God.
But I still feel that on balance, it was worth it.
Jeez.
He's a lizard, this
I
Carville.
hate taxis.
I don't like James Carville, but I mean, the guy he's on fire now. He's basically saying that Bernie Sanders is controlled by Putin, and that Trump has won the Nevada thing and you just gotta love the mayhem that's going on here. I mean, are there any party elders in the Democratic Party who could stand up and say, "Listen, no, Bernie, you're not going to be the nominee. No, Michelle, you're not going to be the nominee. Hillary, don't even think about it. You're going to be in jail."
Yeah.
And let's put a team together here that at least can be credible. But to start saying, to raise the idea that Bernie Sanders is controlled by Putin, I mean, that's really out there.
It's just become so stupid. I mean, anybody that they don't like. Putin is the most powerful man in the world. He's got to be sitting there in Moscow like, "Hey, I'm doing everything."
That's what I actually just said on RT International at 1 o'clock. I was just on. But
He's
anyway,
the busiest man in the megalomania business.
But honestly, if people want to get into some hard facts, and I saw some of them actually, believe it or not, on there in MSNBC last night, what should be really concerning Democrats are a few things. The first is that the size of the Trump rally crowds is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and that when you compare the primary turnout levels in the Democratic primaries in 2020 compared to 2008, you're going to be extremely upset if you're a Democrat, if you care about actual numbers, because you're not seeing as many people come out for the Democrats, and you're seeing monster crowds. And to get into a Trump rally, I know because I got tickets, and you have to fill out a questionnaire, and then they have all these details about your political preferences. Are you likely to vote? Who did you vote for last time? And they're learning at the Trump rallies that close to 20% of the recent ones are Democrats, people who did not vote in 2016. And you're seeing declining turnouts for the Democrat caucus and primaries. So
I guess that's right. I mean, cactus.
Yeah. So anyway, and then here we have Tingles, Chris Matthews, who was so in love with Obama.
Why is he tingles?
Because he felt a tingle running up his leg every time. He said it himself on air. "I feel a tingle going up my leg listening to Obama."
Oh my God.
It was just absurd. But he's now
I
saying...
don't know if you should admit that to too many people.
But he really deserves to get... I mean, you can say anything you want on a podcast, television, but if you say something really fucking stupid...
Gotta go on the Chris Matthews show.
Well, it's reliable that he'll say something really funny. But I mean, he likened, and he went on and on. You know how somebody thinks they're being really smart, and they tell this long tale about how, well, this reminds me of what happened in France in 1940 when the Germans overran France. That's what's going on right now in the Democratic Party, says Chris Matthews. In other words, Bernie Sanders is Hitler. I mean, that's way over the top.
Yeah.
especially in the case, I didn't know this about Bernie Sanders, but either, I guess it's his grandparents were killed in the Holocaust, or maybe his parents, I don't know, but it's so far over the top to make these types of comparisons. And this guy still has a contract. I mean, he's 70, well, I guess it's ageist to say this, but I mean, he's in his 70s. There have to be some people who don't smoke crack on a regular basis so you could hire to work at this channel. And the guy just needs
Stephen Halper is available.
He does smoke crack, though, apparently.
Well, yeah, he does. You know, Charles, I definitely want to thank Hytham G for utilizing Super Chat on Crowdsource the Truth 2. Apparently, Katie Hill's associate got arrested for hacking. Does that mean anything to you?
It does. It's just that apparently a number of Katie Hill's opponents were hacked. And I guess Katie Hill was too busy having affairs with multiple people with her husband.
Right.
So
was she the one who did the bong hits? And
I think so, yeah.
So what
campaign staffers? I mean, she's in California. But
yeah,
just a quick side point here on if we go back to that. I'm sorry.
Sure.
Side point. If we look at the table to the right now, Laura Ingraham, who can be quite funny, does make an excellent point that how is it that we can only have 60% of the caucus counted, which is roughly where it is now. This was with 5% in. You're sitting there, and Tom Steyer must be really freaking rich because he spends $170 million and gets 8.7% of a caucus where the angry, snarling Bernie Sanders gets 34%.
33.6
rounded up, yeah. And Joe Biden, who's a serial liar and fool, frankly. I mean, he's tried to tell this big tale that he was down in South Africa trying to meet Mandela and he was arrested, and
suddenly Corn Pop came out of nowhere.
I was like, dude,
wait, Joe Biden was arrested in South Africa?
No, he wasn't, but he said he was.
What?
Yeah, in the last 24 hours, he's been going around saying this. And the prince's like, no, Joe, that didn't happen. That's not true.
How can he think that no one's going to look into that? I mean, that's just so stupid.
He's surrounding himself with yes people. And then, Pete Buttigieg is such a gracious loser that he got up in his concession speech and started attacking Bernie Sanders. I mean, was it Rush or no? Rush and Hannity both call Pete Buttigieg what me worry, Alfred E. Newman.
That's actually a good point.
And Tomahawk Liz Warren, she's going nowhere. It's just, you look at this and there's just nothing.
Well,
I
don't know. Have we decided yet, Charles, if Pete Buttigieg is a CIA plant along the lines of Brobama, or is he a legitimate schmuck?
I just think he's a legitimate straight-up fool. I mean, on his record, you sit there.
Phi Beta Kappa.
Okay, great, but I mean...
No, I don't trust that.
No, that's because you keep getting them wrong. There's Phi Beta Kappa is the
Kappa Beta Phi.
Yeah, it's different.
No, I'm not getting them wrong. They are.
Phi Beta Kappa is a legitimate organization.
Kappa Beta Phi is the mirror image.
No. It's Kappa Beta Phi is not like Phi Beta Kappa. It's an inside joke. It is not. It's just a plaything. It's not. Phi Beta Kappa is serious.
Bill Clinton's in it.
Kappa Beta Phi or Phi Beta?
Phi Beta Kappa.
Well, he could be in because he was a good student. It's different. No, it's very different, Jason. It really is.
Okay. I don't trust any of these things, Charles. I think it's a collection of criminals, but we can talk about that later.
Okay. So, we have here, and this is a story, if we go, this is a disturbing story, this next one down, yeah. And I forget which, there's a new...
This is about Kevin Spacey's father. What is this?
This is a book about people being enamored. It starts off, Adolf Hitler loved American movies. He would laugh at Laurel and Hardy and Mickey Mouse and Greta Garbo and all this kind of stuff. I don't know how much of this is true.
Well, it's fair that Hitler loved Disney because I think Disney loved Hitler.
Yeah, and there were people. I mean, there were Henry Ford, Prescott Bush. There were people who were familiar with the history of Germany and the grave problems that happened after World War I inside Germany, who were looking at Hitler wrongly, obviously, and saying, this is person.
Nice guy.
Well, it wasn't. I don't think they were doing it because they were delighted that Hitler was about to kill many Jewish people. I think he was selling himself, and I'm not making the comparison to Mike Bloomberg in the same way. He was selling himself as a can-do fixer. I could get the country back running again, and there needs to be sober reflection, not only on Hitler, but on Mao, on Stalin, on these despots who leap into periods of great calamity and despair, put their hands up and say, I'll fix this. Just let me break every conceivable rule and don't ask any questions. And by the way, I'm going to put all the journalists in jail. That's not what we want to do in 2020 or ever again. Yet, there seem to be quite a few people who are prepared to say, oh yeah, give this person the keys to the car and give this person the power to lock everybody up who disagrees. And we don't seem to ever learn.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's what happens when you are all down for Hitler and whatnot.
Yeah. So when we think about what is the main nation in the world that might have been meddling in U.S. and other elections with the U.S., it's the U.K. And here, the story in Zero Hedge, Jason. Yeah. There's now a revelation that the person who is allowing Assange to be extradited has gotten financial benefits. And that's,
Whoa.
We can't take this lying down.
Why is Trump not taking a more active role in sticking up for Assange? This is troubling.
I don't understand it. I just don't understand it. It's not like Britain today, the UK today is sitting there and ruling the world. Britain is reeling, needs a trade deal from the US. It's got majorly crime problems now across the country and in London. I think it's a fair calculation on the balance of economic, financial, and geopolitical power. Britain needs the US a lot more than we need Britain. And I would have thought that Assange today would be a sympathetic character, that most Americans across the political spectrum would say, hey, this guy's gotten a bum deal here. And isn't he the key to understanding what happened in 2016? He had the big dump of DNC documents in June 2016. He had the big dump of Podesta documents. Presumably, he understands where those documents came from. Let's find out who supplied these documents. I can't believe that there isn't an ability of the Trump team to sort this out and do right by Assange.
Well, obviously, it seems like they're not interested. He got very involved in at least commenting on the Roger Stone issue, and comparatively, there's been next to nothing for Assange. So that's not good for people who want freedom of the press and people who haven't committed crimes to not go to jail.
Exactly, and I hate to allow Newsweek to get any. The next one down, two down. The Nigel Farage. I hate to give Newsweek any prominence. That thing in the 70s, Newsweek and Time Magazine were interesting magazines that most people read both of them, and it had a lot of good stories and stuff. I think, and I said this actually on RT International just now, I think all this focus on Russia has been an attempt by the elites and the cronies to distract from the mega corruption that has been going on as people, starting with George H.W. Bush and others, the academic crowd, sucked up to China, bought into the argument that it's going to be eventually a vast new market. Let's get on the right side of China. Let's break the rules. Let's not stand up for free speech and the principles that make this country great. Let's just
order bat soup and call it a day.
Yeah, let's cut a dirty deal with China because eventually they're going to overtake the United States. It's inevitable. There are more people. And, the number of universities, Harvard just had a big disaster with a chemistry professor being arrested.
Selling stuff to China.
Well, yeah, and
maybe coronavirus.
Well, and the point is that it is highly likely that university campus after university campus has literally kowtowed to China one way or another. by letting students come into the universities without really vetting who they are. Were they spies or students or both? Letting secrets leave our country and go into China for payoffs in the form of research grants and other benefits. And I enjoy Chinese people, I enjoy Chinese culture and Chinese food and things like that, but I do not have truck, as they say, with the Communist Party of China. I don't buy the argument that one of the highest priorities of the United States should be to make sure that the Communist Party of China remains in power. I think quite the opposite is the case.
What about trucks?
Truck, I don't put up with them. I don't like.
I never heard of that before.
It's 19th century English.
But
no,
I'm just blocking some pornographers that are joining us today, Charles. I wonder if you have any questions for the porno people.
So Anthony Weiner is trying to make his...
No, I think I know who it is. It's a unique type of attack that's not the same as what we used to face in the past, but it's a good opportunity for people to utilize Super Chat or become sponsors on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth.
But in particular, Faraj was trying to make clear that we should not be, that the United States is correct to stand up and say, Huawei, no Huawei. You want to get...
No way.
No way Huawei. And you want to cooperate with the United States on security matters? We're not doing it if you take Huawei. And I think we're totally within our power to do that.
So that's a pretty interesting development, because I remember you were sort of upset when Bojo was going against Trump on Huawei.
Yeah, I think that will be changing, I hope. And so then we have this story here about Phil Haney, and I noticed, and I know Steve King is somebody he's made stupid comments, but and he's been taken off committees and paid a heavy price for some of the comments that he's made. But he is correct to note that this whistleblower, Phil Haney, was found dead of a single gunshot wound to his chest. This is somebody who was a whistleblower alleging that the Obama administration was, to put it politely, soft on radical Islamic terrorism. And now he shows up dead, and he didn't have suicidal thoughts. This is a story Sarah Carter, to her great credit, has put her finger on this story. And this is something we really need to study. What happened? What really happened to this Phil Haney guy? What was he trying to expose? Let's contrast the degree to which he was a whistleblower and in theory protected with this person who can't be named, who I would argue is not a whistleblower, but instead is a traitor, and who got way too far down a track, distracting this nation at a critical moment with utter bunk.
Why do they have John Cardillo's tweet here?
I don't know.
Who posted this?
I don't know who he is.
He's a Newsmax guy, I believe. Yeah. Isn't he?
I don't know. I don't know who he is.
Something going on with this guy. Had Larry Klayman on, and what's her name? Cassandra Fairbanks. It was a bit of a dust up there on Chris Ruddy's Newsmax.
Mm-hmm. Well, then just on a few not so light moments, but lighter moments, now we have a witness come forward that says Prince Andrew did grope this Virginia Roberts Giuffre on Epstein Island. That's in the New York Post, which I'd say has become the paper of record in New York.
Well, it's certainly the paper of anything having to do with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. This is an interesting article. Charles, Margaret Bertram has just utilized Super Chat. Thank you, Margaret. And she's asking if there's any way to summarize the 211 podcasts in 211 sentences for those who are so confused about the details, because there are a zillion details. What's the skinny on Mickey and Minnie? I don't know if that would be enough sentences to summarize.
Yeah, it's a project actually I intend to do. But I haven't done it. I agree it can't be a sentence on each podcast, but it should probably be 3 sentences on each podcast.
Yeah. And you remember we even started that show 90 Seconds with Charles Ortel, which was interesting, but it didn't seem to capture people's attention in the way that I expected it might.
Yeah, well. People
Perhaps
wanted more
we'll
time, I
revisit
guess.
that at some point.
Yeah. Now, then we have, this is hilarious. This is in the humor department.
Look at all these departments.
Yeah, the humor department. Now, this is pretty funny. I don't know if it's going to come up, but there's a Mardi Gras float. Where is Mardi Gras? Is that just in New Orleans, or?
I think it's everywhere.
Okay, so this
Brazil, there's stuff going on.
Well, this is.
It's not loading, Charles.
It could be that it's getting too much attention, or maybe it's been the Clintons have complained. If it does eventually come up, people could look at their leisure. It has a series of very funny floats, including one of Hillary Clinton. Somebody went to a lot of effort to do a gigantic float of Hillary Clinton strangling Jeffrey Epstein, and funny comments on the side of each car. So I guess people have to do that at their leisure.
Yeah, something not loading there about that.
That happens. And finally, Zero Hedge. This was out yesterday, I think, the very bottom. Yeah, she's apparently told this Christina Oxenberg, who's a distant royal but a celebrity. Maxwell told Oxenberg supposedly that they have videotape on everybody, which is not surprising. That was the whole purpose of this.
Yeah, it's not news. That's nothing.
Well, except that, I mean...
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would guess that there's a lot...
The caption for this is, I was told there would be gay ice cream.
Yeah.
That's how they entrapped Mini Mike.
Mini Mike. Mini.
Doesn't want people to find out
how many he is.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to go through, this is now some more substantive stuff that we want to take people through. Jason, do you remember April 29th, 2015, roughly what was going on then? So Hillary, I'll put you in the frame. Hillary had announced on, I think, the 13th of April, 14th of April, something like that, roughly. Trump had not yet announced officially. And this is a WikiLeaks Podesta dump email, 8:02 p.m. This is Hillary coming up with an idea. This is from Jen Palmieri, a senior person on the campaign, writing to a bunch of people. I wanted to follow up on a Hillary Clinton idea of doing a video.
Oh.
Sort of pre-butting the Clinton Foundation stuff. It does make sense for her to publicly state that she never did anything at state to help a donor. Now, maybe she didn't, but
right. She facilitated other people doing things to help donors.
And then there's these suggestions of Hillary. She's very proud of the Clinton Foundation work because they want people to give to it to support good works. People were foolish if they thought they'd get a benefit out of this. There's no quid pro quo. And late on the 30th, early on the 30th, 1:37 in the morning, this campaign operative, Joel Benison, says, yeah, I agree. Let's take this quid pro quo thing off the table, and let's do it on a basis where she doesn't take any questions. Well, people need to understand that around this time, the Inspector General of the intelligence community had begun an investigation. And if we hit, Jason, if you can hit this one up here for people who haven't seen this yet, how many times did we hear that the investigation into Hillary Clinton was part of a normal security review and nothing to it, blah, 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 blah. This is now the 39-part file, thousands of pages that are out there in the public domain of what truly was going on. So by the 29th of April, 2015, the inspector, the questions for if there are real investigations going on with Durham, what did this Inspector General of the intelligence community, what had that person accomplished by April 29th, 2015? And that person, remember, is none other than Charles McCulloch, who has left government to be on the legal team that is defending this whistleblower who can't be named. So to me, it's clear that certainly in the 15-16 time frame, the leadership under the Obama administration was not truly trying to get to the bottom of whether Hillary mishandled or did not mishandle classified information. What that leadership team from Obama on down needed to protect is the degree to which Hillary Clinton was communicating with Barack Obama, possibly also with both of them on unsecured email or unsecured devices and servers and other things that were not the ways in which this should have happened. So there's a deep backstory here that's out there in the public domain. The surface level media is not getting to it, but we need to go back into this. Remember, this is before Trump is an announced candidate. Hillary's working with her team to try to staunch this investigation, which had started belatedly. And I think that the motives of the people leading the investigation should rightly be called into question. And most importantly, on April 29th and April 30th, 2015, now we know that Hillary Clinton was in fact one of 3 Class A directors of the Clinton Foundation, a fact that she and the team have tried to disguise. The Clinton Foundation, the main Clinton Foundation, was a public charity that could not be controlled by a family, but Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea controlled this pig. And I'm referring to the foundation. And this is just outrageous that Team Comey, that the IRS, that the FBI, the Department of Justice, frankly, the Durham, and the others have not really whooped up on this mess. I mean, this wasn't simply a fraud at this point. They weren't simply raising money. Hillary didn't simply need money for her campaign. They were obstructing criminal investigations, both of how she mishandled classified information and by January of 2016 of the Clinton Foundation. This is a massive obstruction of justice and criminal conspiracy that needs to be fully uncovered and disciplined. So with that, Jason.
Dry cleaned, you might say, Charles.
Yeah, if it's possible.
With that next page?
Yes, please.
I try to anticipate, but sometimes it's hard to know.
You know. Anyway, so another point for people to consider here, and oftentimes the Clintons love to get you involved in debating the meaning of the word "is," so you ignore Whitewater and you ignore Juanita Broaddrick, and you ignore real big, messy crimes. But it's important as we think about these Clinton frauds to understand that charities are not allowed, according to the laws or regulations that exist, and longstanding precedent, they're not allowed to engage in partisan political activities.
Right.
Yet, and they're defined here as, biasing one candidate to favor over another, opposing a candidate you're not allowed to do.
You're not allowed to say anything bad about a candidate.
Right, yeah, exactly. You can't favor one.
I've been reading about this quite a lot, Charles, in preparation for my upcoming,
right.
I'll talk about that later.
All right. But so we look here for every period up to 2016, to every election cycle, 2002, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Hillary was running in 2000 for Senate. In 2 and 4, the chairman of the Democratic Party, Terry McAuliffe, was I would argue, lead director of the fraudulent William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation that didn't believe in obtaining audits, didn't believe in filing truthful tax returns, complete ones. By 6, she's running for Senate. She had to win re-election. In 8, and at many of these foundation meetings, they touted Bill Clinton's presidency, they touted Hillary Clinton's candidacy, and the Clintons' selfless devotion to charity. Then in 8, the team, eventually Barack Obama, needed a lot of money, and we estimate that at least $200 million went missing in 2008. In 10, the lowest learner in the IRS realized the power of these foundations and viciously went after Tea Party conservatives. At the same time, the Clinton Foundation was fraudulently, an attempt was made to reorganize it. In 12, they absolutely, to get Barack Obama reelected, they could not let the truth come out about the Clinton Foundation conspiracies and frauds and corruptions. And then by 2014, Hillary had left February 1st, 2013, and she walked out the front door of the State Department, or probably the back door. No, with the presidential records. All of the communications back and forth having to do with the State Department that could have involved the fundraising for her campaign. She had all the contact information, and nobody said anything about it in 2014.
And towards that point, 4KCD, this is a complicated name, but 4KCD Me Too is saying, why does no one ever question what happened to the $6+ billion that vanished unaccounted for from the State Department when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State?
We're going to get to that in a second. Yeah, absolutely.
See, nobody, Charles talks about it.
Well, wow. So if we go to the next page.
See, part of what I'm doing with all this complicated sound processing, Charles, is trying to create a noise gate to keep that out.
That's right. So we began this talking about what I'm calling now the foreign aid charade, the degree to which
Ooh, I like that.
gigantic amounts of money gets sent around the world for various causes. So this is not a business model, it's a monkey business model. We start with George W. Incurious Bush, who really did look a bit like Curious George if you go...
Oh, that's racist, Charles. You're off the internet.
No. Was George W. Bush...
What?
I think he was of the Caucasian persuasion.
It doesn't matter.
Anyway, so he sets up this thing, PEPFAR, which has given, this is from Wikipedia summary, $80 billion for HIV and AIDS treatment. Now, it's important to understand, as you think about this, there's a very big difference between HIV and AIDS.
Right.
HIV is something whose progress to full-blown AIDS.
People get annoyed when you say full-blown AIDS, by the way.
I don't care if they get annoyed.
Okay, just letting it know.
Is that it is a condition that once your count gets to a certain level where you're deemed to have actual AIDS.
Right.
Right now, there's nothing you can do for it. You're going to die. It's a question of when. It's a short period of time. On the other hand, you take a guy like Magic Johnson, who was diagnosed, who was HIV positive in 1992 or 3. He's very much alive today. You can live a long, healthy life with HIV treatment and antiretroviral drugs and your diet and things like that. You will die. Many people who are HIV positive are going to die of things that are totally different than HIV.
Well, because HIV, to be technical for a second, is the human immunovirus, right? It's a virus that attacks the immune system and causes the acquired immune deficiency syndrome that is AIDS. You don't actually die from AIDS. You just have no immune system and you get like a cold, you die.
Right. But the point is, though, that you can slow the progression of HIV into full-blown AIDS. And that is something that doctors have known about for a very long time. Bill Clinton did not come up with that idea. Bill Clinton did not actually bring the cost of HIV/AIDS drugs down himself. People have been on a campaign at Cipla in India and other places to do that starting in the 90s. So when Bill Clinton was president and his administration did not financially support the fight against HIV/AIDS to the degree that it has been supported subsequently. My point with all this is, you go back to the slide, a hell of a lot of money. $80 billion may be a trifle, a mere pittance to AOC. But $80 billion is a lot of money to me and to American taxpayers.
On top of what is a political sugar baby, Charles.
I guess so.
Buy her an iPhone.
Right, and so you have one operation started in 2000, announced in 2003, funded in 2003. Forward has put up $80 billion for that. Global Fund has come up with another $41.6 billion. Now, sometimes PEPFAR gives money into the Global Fund. And then now Unitate, the thing we've talked about in the past ad nauseum, was created in 2006. It sent a lot of money to fight, in theory, HIV, HIV. But you look here and it says, and this is again from Wikipedia, it says that Unitate and indeed all of these operations work with our so-called implementing organizations to do this work. So gigantic pools of money are created, and these pools, both PEPFAR and the Global Fund and Unitate, none of these pools, in my view, is appropriately brought to task for diverting money just by sending it to the Clinton HIV/AIDS Initiative, Clinton Health Access Initiative, other loosely controlled slush buckets, where our either money that was borrowed to support this or our taxpayer funds gets wasted and diverted and likely stolen by people around the process. And this is not, we're not talking about little bits and pieces of money here. This is well over 125 billion all in just for these programs here. And there are others we could name. I just thought about putting 3 up here. So in this key period where the Clinton Foundation was, in theory, reorganized, which is starting late in December 2007, when they knew that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts was going to revoke the authority of the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative to operate in the key state of Massachusetts, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where the headquarters was. When they knew that, through the 29th of September 2013, this encompasses the entire period when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, there was no Inspector General at the State Department in this entire period.
And that seems staggering. How could they have done that?
It's reckless beyond. I mean, it's not the kind of thing, you shouldn't sit there and say, oh yeah, that's a safe thing to do. Be like, well, we'll fly this plane and let's do it.
No pilot, no air traffic controller.
No landing gear. Let's put, I don't know. It's an obvious thing. And it'd be one thing if there was no Inspector General, let's say, for the weekend.
Right.
Right. But you're talking about the entire period where they attempted to restructure the Clinton Foundation. The entire period where, during which Barack Obama's president, his first term, part of a little short bit of his second term, when there's so many cross currents here, how much foreign aid, American foreign aid and other foreign aid gets, instead of being sent to the other country, goes to American companies or American companies or other companies in donor countries, without the type of tight controls to make sure that the political contributors are getting a reward in the form of our State Department saying, yeah, we're going to send a whole bunch of General Mills cereal to Haiti. I'm just making this up now. And instead of saying that General Mills would give it to us at a low cost, we'll let General Mills sell it to the aid people at, let's say, full wholesale cost. I mean, you can wash a lot of dirty money through the administration of foreign aid. And I really think I'd love to see the Trump administration stand up for the benefit of the whole political spectrum and say, enough of this crap. If American companies want to assist in foreign aid, very few American companies operate at 100% capacity. Let them give us a cut rate deal on those extra boxes of cereal, not full wholesale cost, really low, tiny, give them to us. And then we'll give it, make sure it's good stuff, good drugs and this, that. I don't see that going on.
Some quality Cheerios going over that way.
That's right.
Crowdsource the Truth is an American company that operates at about 150% capacity.
There you go. That's right. So you're thinking of donating to the Clinton Foundation, are you?
No, not at all. Okay, but back to the slides.
Yeah, we can go to the next slide.
Next slide.
All right. So this is really disgusting. We've talked a little bit about Ethiopia, and what we have here is we have a timeline. This is an excerpt from a press release, 17th of January 2006. The release itself, you can see it up there. It's
click it.
You don't have to click it, no, but because I've excerpted key stuff from it. But this is dated the 17th of January 2006. Let's stop right there. There was no Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative that had valid legal authority to do any of the work described in this press release. And they knew it by the 17th of January 2006, but that didn't stop them from making this press announcement in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, claiming that the Clinton Foundation signed an agreement with the government of Ethiopia. The Clinton Foundation is going to provide all sorts of stuff that it had no authority to do. They had done this work, they claimed, as part of a pediatric initiative launched in the spring of 2005. Clinton Foundation had no legal authority to do any international initiative of any kind, let alone one involving children, in the spring of 2005.
That's one of their favorite kinds. And sorry to interrupt, Charles, but Moni Caseberg has just utilized Super Chat to bring to our attention a person of interest for future deep dives, Dr. Rajiv Shah.
Oh, of course.
Yes, he's done stints at the Gates Foundation, USAID, and the Rockefeller Foundation.
And the Clinton Foundation.
There you go. So it's a very useful person.
Yeah,
Thank you
Thank you very much. Yeah, Rajiv Shah was a young guy who had I think he might also worked at McKinsey, and it used to be that USAID had some distance between it and the State Department, but under Hillary's tenure with no Inspector General, it reported direct to Hillary.
Whoa!
So there's a lot to look in here. But here you see a quote from the Schlickmeister, or as Rush calls him, Der Schlickmeister. I'm extremely pleased that my foundation, this is dated the 17th of January 2006, Bill Clinton on the 17th of January 2006 is not president, chairman of the Clinton Foundation, or Clinton HIV/AIDS, or a trustee, or a director, and any of the financial consequences of his activities, or I should say none of the financial consequences of his activities are documented in any Clinton Foundation filing anywhere. So how does he get off saying it's his foundation? This is a public charity. It hasn't registered in New York to do any of this operation. It hasn't registered these names. And here it's doing this work in Ethiopia. And then we have, this is a name that you might not initially notice. In the next paragraph, we have a quote from somebody called Dr. Tedros Adhanom. Okay, and you look at that, and we're going to get to who this dude is in a second, because he does a lot of press releases. In fact, he does a press release a day.
Really?
And we'll tell you in a second why. So this alleges, this is under Bill Clinton's, not signature, but he's basically issuing this thing, that Ethiopia has been buying drugs via the Clinton Foundation since August of 2004. Now, August of 2004 is almost precisely when the FBI under Mueller, James Comey, and Rod Rosenstein said, you know what, we're not going to prosecute this Clinton Foundation anymore. How could you prosecute it any less? Exactly. But here, Ethiopia has been a member of the Clinton Foundation procurement. This consortium is 50 countries using the Clinton Foundation to buy HIV/AIDS drugs. Now, in August of 2004, we know from the Dirty Medicine Fortune magazine article, we know that that's precisely when the WHO knew that Ranbaxy drugs had major league problems. Okay, just in August of 2004, we know that directly from Dirty Medicine, we know that from Catherine Eban's book, and we know that from other sources. All right, so this is written here saying the foundation has agreed to assist the Ethiopian government. And the question here is the Clinton Foundation, is Bill Clinton or Ira Magazine or all these people agents, unregistered foreign agents of the government of Ethiopia at a time when Hillary Clinton is a senator, one of 100 senators, which is a lofty position in our country? And the answer is absolutely yes. Okay, and of course, Dopey Comey says, well, I'm not going to, why would I do anything about that? That's going to complicate my ability to get a cushy job at Lockheed and then at a hedge fund. And then, who knows, I might one day want to cover this shit all up when they call me back to be the head of the FBI. So from an IRS report, I'm just going to read, it says, the key question is whether the foreign government serves as an agent, foreign government's the agent, through which the charity's exempt purpose is accomplished, or whether the charity was formed to support the foreign government. In the latter case, the charity being formed to support the foreign government, the organization cannot qualify for exemption.
No matter what.
Supporting a foreign government is not a recognized charitable purpose. So how is Bill Clinton doing any of this?
Wow. I don't know if people realize that, Charles.
Well, that's making it clear. We've put a link to this IRS report before. If people want to get to it, you could just put a portion of that quote into Google and it'll come right up. So if we go to the next page, gets to be amusing. All right. The person who did this disastrous work with an entity, the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative, that didn't legally exist, is the person who today is in charge of the World Health Organization. Since sometime in 2017, he goes by Dr. Tedros. He's got 3 names. And this is a summary from Wikipedia. It says when he got to office in 2005, Ethiopia was in horrible shape. And in fact, this is a quote. I actually was laughing so loud I had to leave the room in the library. With little economic service, the company lacked capacity in early 2005 to build its own health systems. Much of the Ethiopian Human Resources for Health had fled the country. For example, there were more Ethiopian doctors in the Chicago metropolitan area than in Ethiopia in 2005.
Whoa.
So this idiot con man, Ira Magaziner, says just the country to rape and pillage with my plan. You know, it's got 100 million people. Of course, we could build an argument that there's a lot of HIV and AIDS there. Of course, we could then get lots of money liberated from the dolts at PEPFAR and Global Fund and Unitate for these projects in a country where there are no doctors, vast country with no roads, where people live in the rural areas, no reliable electricity, no hospitals, no electricity, no nothing. And who's the organization that's going to lend credibility for this? My alma mater and my parents' and brothers' alma mater, Yale. They get this professor at Yale, Elizabeth Bradley is her name, and they get involved creating, of course it has to be an initiative, the Ethiopia Hospital Management Initiative. Much better than saying, steal money from taxpayers around the world so we can get Hillary Clinton elected as president so we can steal more money initiative.
Yeah.
That gets launched in January 2005. In January 2005, here it's a partnership with the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative. It doesn't exist. And at Yale, you'd think maybe the people of Yale Law School are too busy, giving cover, preparing for the resistance against Trump. They were that far-sighted in 2005. But you would think that somebody at Yale would say, all right, does the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative actually exist? The pesky little question. Somebody show me some documentation that says the damn thing exists. They have a law school. They have law professors. They have a business school. There's some smart people, I believe, still at Yale. They could probably figure out, no, they don't do any of that. They say, this Magaziner, he's a Rhodes Scholar. Clinton's a Rhodes Scholar. Hillary's a senator. She's going to be a president. They both met at Yale Law School. They couldn't be crooks.
Right.
That would just be horrible. I mean, they couldn't be operating.
What are the chances of that?
In one of the most corrupt nations on earth. They couldn't be gearing up to steal money from Ethiopia.
One of the most corrupt nations on earth. You're talking about the United States?
I'm talking about New Haven.
Oh.
No,
yeah.
No, I'm talking about Ethiopia. But anyway, so they have a long verbiage. And here's this. I would like you actually to hit this link if you could. This is an example of the kind of drivel that passes for peer-reviewed academic, quote, literature. So this literature comes out on the 10th of September, 2008. And either this article, and here's Elizabeth Bradley, remember that name, Elizabeth Bradley, don't forget that name. And Ed Wood, Edward Wood is an officer not the head of the Clinton HIV/AIDS initiative. Remember, December 31st, 2009, the Clinton Health Access Initiative submits an application to the IRS stating that it was not a successor to any organization. Here's an article published in a peer review International Journal for Quality in Healthcare and Foundation Fraud, the latter part being inserted by me, published on the 10th of September 2008. Now remember, in July of 2008, Ira Magaziner and the CEO of the Clinton HIV/AIDS initiative went into the Clinton Foundation and said, guys, we stole $23 million. What are we going to do? Right? It's July of 2008. We got an election coming up here. We can't let this go public before the election. Who knows? McCain might win. Oh, let's cover it up. We'll cover it up. This thing's published September of 2008, and the same team, Magaziner and Bill Clinton and others, put a fraudulent application in saying that this is not a successor operation. Well, here you have just one peer-reviewed article. There are literally dozens of peer-reviewed articles that are going into my book, and I've got research people working on this now in several locations around the world. There's just so much information here that it was bold-faced, knowing rubbish hurling out of the mouths of these people who are putting in applications to our IRS while Hillary was Secretary of State, while Barack Obama was working on his legacy. And here's just one piece of counter evidence saying
rubbish.
The Clinton Rubbish Initiative. But if we go back into the slide, why do I keep bringing up this Elizabeth Bradley?
Why?
Elizabeth Bradley is the president of Vassar College. She went from being a person who was, let's charitably say, hoodwinked by Magaziner, by this Tedros in Ethiopia, and Bill Clinton and others. And the trustees of Vassar say, okay, Vassar's not a famous institution where we ought to have a leading light person lead it. Let's get Elizabeth Bradley. And what diligence was done on this Elizabeth Bradley? She staked her career on this Ethiopian project. She's done countless articles about all her work here. She claims, there are all kinds of claims that the Clinton Foundation was intimately involved. It didn't exist. It had no authority to do any of this work. And this person was an ordinary professor, became a named professor, part of a big, I think it's called the Brady Johnson Grand Strategy Program. She became the leader of that until Vassar plucked her out of Yale and made her a president.
Bill Clinton's Johnson Foundation? What's it called? I didn't hear that.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a case study that one could write a book about this, and one might write a book. There's certainly a chapter in the book about this. So how Yale and so many people could have fallen down in the job here. Let's talk about Ethiopia in the final slide here, next page. Okay, now this is an excerpt. If you hit the link at the top, Jason, this is a report in 2017 on the state of Ethiopia. Okay, now maybe it's overblown. This is the anti-corruption portal, and I don't know who GAN anti-corruption. You see about GAN at the top there. Let's see who that is actually.
This?
To the right, yeah. I don't know if it'll come up.
Why not?
GAN integrity. Okay, you see, so these are people who, in theory, can help you. Figures a scruffy. Oh boy!
Maybe this looks like everyone working for this thing is a model. What's going on here? Come on, this is ridiculous. No office looks like this.
And then you have at the bottom, I heart compliance. Anyway.
What? This is ridiculous.
Well, look, these are...
Hyundai's in charge, and Live Nation.
So, I mean, it's a company that focuses on, in theory, identifying risks. Interestingly, it doesn't seem to say who the people are.
Well, it's a company that focuses on either hiring extremely good-looking people or just using stock photography for their website.
What does about say in there? Yeah, who we are, meet the people. There we go.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe we'll see the real people now.
So you got a
Mutt and Jeff.
Okay. Oh, none
different
of these people
yeah.
look like
none of those people look very much at all.
Marty Meyer.
Marty and Morty. And Neil Lustig.
Valerie Charles.
Yeah, Valerie Charles. Peter Chang. None
So
of these
who are
people,
all these people
look very much at all like the models who were, I think.
No, that's strange that they have that model picture.
But anyway, if we go back into the slide itself, what I did is I lifted portions, and there's a lot more than I could have done here. Let's think what this model agency says about Ethiopia and the status of it in 2017. Okay, high risk of corruption dealing with the judiciary. Bribes for favorable judgments are common. The police is perceived to be rampantly corrupt. High risk of corruption in Ethiopia's public service provision. High risk in land administration, tax administration, customs administration, and in public procurement. Now remember, the Clinton Foundation, in theory, starting in August of 2004, was involved procuring drugs for the supposed HIV/AIDS population in Ethiopia when all the doctors had left Ethiopia, or most of the doctors had left to go work in Chicago. We could riff on Chicago and whether there's any corruption in Chicago, but that's probably a side point.
Right.
The point is, you've got a massive project with over 100 million people scattered in this tough country where corruption is rife. This is in 2017. Imagine what it was like in 2004 and 5, when Magaziner and Bill Clinton said, we're done building this thing, the double wide over the Arkansas River, or near the Arkansas River, in Little Rock, and we've managed to do that, fleecing banks, fleecing donors, failing to file any of the reports that need to be filed.
Even made bespoke fleece jackets.
And, there we probably stole 60 to 80 million, but now with this HIV/AIDS scheme, we could steal in the billions of dollars. So we got to go to countries that are even more corruption prone than Little Rock. Well, Ira, give me a country. Well, you got a country? And Ira's like, yeah, I'm a consultant. I'm a Rhodes Scholar. Like you, Bill, I didn't finish my Rhodes Scholarship. There's nothing odd there. And I made a whole bunch of money. Ethiopia. We'll do Ethiopia. We'll get ready for Haiti. We've got Katrina in our gun sights. We've got, we're going to go to the places where people will buy the argument, the con job, that we can actually treat HIV and AIDS in countries where there are no doctors, no hospitals, no roads, no electricity, no ability to check any of this. But these new multinational schemes operating principally out of Geneva, where tens of billions are going to flow our way. That's what we're going to do, boss. And Bill's like, okay, great, let's get this done. I mean, we need money for Hillary's campaign, and who knows how many mistresses I'm going to have to pay off. So we better make sure that we do this. Of course, this is a working theory. So you look at this, and you think back to some of our earlier presentations when we said, if you want to run a U.S. charity internationally, it must be tightly controlled from a U.S. base. Does this sound tightly controlled to you, Jason?
I'll tell you what seems tightly controlled is the girdle Hillary Clinton wears every time she appears in public to prevent her guts from exploding out and her back from collapsing. Yeah. This is not tightly controlled, however.
No, and actually, when was it actually? I can remember almost exactly. Right around now, it was in February of early February of 1977. I flew down to Kenya, landing first. Flew on Ethiopian Airlines and landed first in Addis Ababa Airport, and it was rather an interesting experience for me as a 21-year-old. You get off, you get off the plane and you're sitting there and you look out the window and you're tired and you notice all these tanks running around the tarmac, and then you notice all these military people, and then you see these Chinese communists in military.
What was going on?
There was
in Ethiopia?
A coup going on.
Oh.
And so we happened to land. I had nothing to do with it.
It seems like a bad time to go.
I was a student. I was trying to get to Nairobi.
Why would they even land the plane in the midst of a military coup?
I don't know that they had an option.
Right.
Probably Iron Magaziner was planning it.
How was Ethiopian Air?
It was not bad. Ethiopia Air back then was actually very well done because TWA, which was then a good, well-run airline, had the management contract to run it. So it was a fine flight. Didn't do so well on getting my luggage in Nairobi. That was a small problem. I had 2 weeks to live in Nairobi with the same set of crappy clothes that I had to buy for no money. The used clothes department, wherever that was in Nairobi, because the tag for the flight was, I want to say, ET-175. And
so they sent the luggage to space.
They sent it actually to Ireland because instead of ET, they wrote EI, and that was a Dublin flight. So the bags went to Dublin, nobody picked them up, so they went back to London, nobody picked them up, then they went back to Dublin and London and Dublin and London. Eventually, somebody figured it out.
Wow. That's before the invention of computers and 737 MAX 8s, which Ethiopian Air crashed one of. But I don't think it's a bad airline. They had also an emergency landing in the ocean one time, and I think the people mostly lived from what should have been a pretty devastating crash.
Well, yeah, again, I hope to go and see Ethiopia. I never went through, the day I landed there during the coup, I kind of felt I should get the hell out of there as quickly as possible. But I think it would be interesting to go there. And I do think when you think about the common thread here, it's the Clintons, Obama, and politicians of both parties Bush, after all, was all in for PEPFAR, are well able to spin these tales of woe and suffering on the backs of people who truly are destitute, and then open the floodgates. The billions come pouring in, not into Ethiopia. They typically go to Switzerland, and where it's much easier to just pretend you sent the money to Switzerland and put the money right back in the dictator's Swiss bank account and the oligarch's Swiss bank account. So,
now, Charles, I'm sure you can virtually anticipate the next comment that I'm going to make, but Our good friend and frequent viewer David Von Kettering is telling us that his favorite phlebotomist is Ethiopian.
Lobotomist.
Phlebotomist.
What's a phlebotomist?
Someone who takes your blood.
Oh, okay. Good.
I'm surprised you didn't know that word.
Yeah, remember I'm extremely squeamish?
Well, I'm just surprised that there's a word that I know that you don't.
There you go. Well, you know many words.
Get your money back from Yale.
That's right.
Sorry, Charles.
That's quite okay. So with that, I think Donald Trump is, I believe.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, we're done. Donald Trump is going to land imminently in India. Let's hope the security is excellent for him over there.
Now, you'll recall, Charles, that when Donald Trump went to Japan, instead of having sushi or izakaya or some sort of traditional Japanese food, he had a burger.
But they eat beef.
Oh, no, I know. But now that burger has become famous in Japan. It's the Donald Trump burger, and there was a huge line outside the restaurant. What's he going to eat in India?
Who knows?
Burgers.
I hope he does not, for his sake,
Perhaps
eat burgers.
chicken tikka masala. I do like that, but that's like ordering chicken teriyaki at the Japanese restaurant. Not very creative.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be incredibly well scripted. It's very difficult to get around. I mean, I'm sure he will have incredible security, and people will do their best on his team to protect him and all that. But I would note that virtually every time the president travels outside this country, the swamp and the people in the mainstream corporate-owned media and the shifty ship types do their level best to try to embarrass him when he's outside the country, breaking a tradition that had been followed.
Not do that.
Absolutely. The politics ends at the water's edge was the established tradition, even under Obama. And so, even and especially under Obama, I hope we don't descend into the hell that we typically descend into, but knowing these pukes, that's exactly what's going to happen. So there's a tremendous potential here for problems for Donald Trump. This is a high degree of difficulty lift. India is a fractious place. There is a big problem with radical Islamic terror in India. There are 150 Muslims in India. It's a country of
150,000.
Million.
More than 150.
Yeah, a lot more than 150. And it's about 1.3 billion people. And life is cheap there. Unfortunately, for all the progress, when you take out the economic consumption and investment of the top 10%, and you look at the balance of the country, spread it out over the 1.1 billion people that remain, and the average person in India is probably consuming $1,500 a year, $2,000 a year. It has not proved out its financial potential quite yet. So I admire the president for making this trip. I wish him luck, Melania luck, and hope he's got some good food tasters. I mean, I like Indian food, but I hope he's got.
I think he's probably cooking burgers on Air Force One. They got a grill in there. But like, if you think about, and I'm not saying Donald Trump is wasting money. Whoever the president of the United States is, if he wants to like get up out of the desk and go walk somewhere, that probably costs more than $2,000. And here's people in India, $2,000 a year. It's an interesting contrast.
Well, the ties, though, also in India, that there are so many talented people who left India to come to this country and make enormous contributions. Indeed, I think that the strongest financially strong demographic group in the United States of America is subcontinent Indians who've come to America and are.
What does that mean, subcontinent?
As opposed to not Native American.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And so.
See, that's.
Going to get me in trouble.
You got that? I got phlebotomist.
Okay. Call it a tie. But anyway, in the World Cup of Fraud, there's not a tie. This team is in it to win it. You've got Coach Bill, shifty-eyed Coach Bill, has taught Barack Obama. The two of them are, I would guess, plotting as we speak to see whether they can get their respective marital partners, shall we refer to them, as installed as the next president of the United States. I think both of these teams are watching what is really, frankly, a shit show in the Democratic primary caucus process and thinking, you know what, if Hillary and Michelle are not in the primaries, not in the debates, then they can't screw up. Let's keep them out of it till the broker convention, and then stuff them on the Democrats, one or the other of them, maybe the pair of them, as the team that needs to be drafted to take on almighty Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So a lot of drama, a lot of stuff to watch, Jason, and that's about all I have today.
That's it for today, Charles. Some people have noticed this little bit of crackling audio. It's something that I'm trying to chase. There's a lot of problems with producing what is essentially a television show inside an apartment that is not a television studio. Well, soundproof and broadcasting and all that. So I've been speaking in general terms about some of the technological adjustments that I've made over here. People are pointing out to me that there is crackling audio or whatever. But basically, if anybody out there knows anything about the attack time versus the release time of a digital noise gate, they could probably provide some useful input. Everybody else who's saying stuff, not helping. But I think I've got it dialed in. The other problem is, and I don't know, maybe we could talk to a sound engineer. The two microphones, a little bit of you is picked up on this one, a little bit of me is picked up on that one. So getting it all balanced out is quite tricky. I think we've had a better result on this broadcast than we have in previous with this whole sound processing situation. But I'll refrain from talking about this anymore because I think it does bore and annoy some people. I really do have to thank the people. Overnight, it was unbelievable. A number of people have increased their sponsorship, I guess because they appreciate the changes that are going on to improve the quality and the reliability of the show. Moving forward in 2020, I want to make sure the show doesn't get taken out either by mistakes, coincidences, technical issues that inevitably arise, or outside interference. So I'm making all these changes to do that. I'm just a few short weeks away, Charles, from what may in fact be the crescendo of this Robert David Steele lawsuit that's been going on almost since the inception of Crowdsource the Truth. So I haven't spoken too much about it, because obviously things that I say could have an impact on the outcome, and we don't want to do that. But soon I'll be talking more about it. Totally appreciate the support of the sponsors on Subscribestar and Patreon. And Charles, I appreciate you, this great show. We will be back tomorrow. People can listen to us now on iTunes. It's very difficult to find in searching, so I'll start posting more of the links to the audio-only podcast version of the show, something people have been asking for since the beginning. So all of this stuff is part of the effort to try and satisfy some of the people who are asking me things a lot that I sometimes haven't responded to yet. But thank you, Charles, and thanks everybody for watching. You can become a sponsor by going to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. If you're watching the show each week and you enjoy it, please sponsor Crowdsource the Truth. I can't keep shows like Sunday with Charles going without your sponsorship. So thanks to everybody who's been there for us. We'll see you tomorrow.